Shockingly, meth wizards are not the most marketable of things. I write a series about a redneck wizard with a crippling meth addiction. 30% of people are like, oh my God, you have to tell me more. 70% of people are like,
Meth.
okay. They back away slowly.
Meet Bob McGough, the man with an uncanny talent for networking. He was bursting with more knowledge and practical advice on being an author than I could have learned in a lifetime. To be honest, I lost count of all the tips and tricks he divulged. Who's Bob? Everybody's telling me about Bob. Bob's great.
I'm the author of the Jubal County Saga. I'm very active in the indie TTRPG space. I design a lot of one-sheet RPGs because I'm a big nerd.
Nuns with guns?
It's called Three Octopuses in a Trench Coat. I have made Meth Wizard as a Morkborg class. I asked my friends if they wanted to die in a short story, how would they like to die? Everything I write ends up having some horror in it. I will crawl into the road in front of an 18-wheeler before Adobe gets a penny of my money. You can look up what I get paid online. Right. No one really talks about that kind of stuff.
And you can look at other people's YouTube analytics, but we can't do that for other authors.
10 years from now, when Journey, Penelope, and me are super famous authors, you'll be like, I
had
got
them on
early.
My show.
Oh, Bob, me and Bob go way back.
You're gonna have to see this one for yourself. So let's roll the show. Hey everybody, welcome to Purdy Nerdy Talk Show. Today I have with us Bob McGough, who I am extremely excited to talk about. I want to give just a little bit of context here for my viewers. So I interviewed Penelope Austin, which the interview is out now. And somewhere in the interview, she mentions Bob McGough. So make sure you go check that out. And probably maybe about a week later, I wake up to a very lovely email in my inbox from Bob, who at the time I didn't quite make the connection. I remember hearing about a Bob and I was like, okay. And he mentions Penelope. So I'm starting to make the connections, but I had just woken up in the morning and I thought, man, this is such a really nice email. It was just a great pat on the back. You know, what I'm doing is good and I should keep doing it. That's the kind of atta girl that I want. And so I was feeling really nice about myself and log on to Facebook. And somebody else who I had interviewed, whose interview is not quite out yet, but that's Journey Windrow, sent me a message saying, hey, do you know Bob McGough? Because he's somebody you should have on your channel. And I thought to myself, the universe should tell me something. So I went and looked Bob up and then reached out to him because definitely the folks who have been on my channel know who I'm looking for and who I want to interview and who I want to talk with. And Bob is definitely that. So Bob, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what you're known for? And I'm sure that's probably quite a lot. So you can start wherever you like.
Yeah. So I'm probably best known for I'm the author of the Jubal County Saga, which is a series. It's an urban fantasy series about a redneck wizard with a crippling meth addiction.
Which I don't want to interrupt you, but I saw that description and I had a little underline going, I can't wait to ask what that's about. Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, so that's what I'm probably most known for. Outside of that, I've done a number of podcasts over the years. Technically, I still do Books, Beards, and Booze. We're quasi on hiatus. That podcast will never die, though.
Yeah.
And then I did Southern Fried Fantasy and a few music-based podcasts. And then I am very active in the indie TTRPG space. I design a lot of one-sheet RPGs. And just you can kind of see it over this shoulder. That's my bookcase of games I'm probably never going to get to play because I just collect rule
you don't
books
have time.
incessantly. Yeah. And then the last thing I'm going to pitch is I run a small nonprofit that supports art, culture, and music in the Montgomery, Alabama area because we need all the help we can get.
Wow. And what's the nonprofit called?
It's called the Hilltop Howlers.
I
come out of a kind of the DIY punk scene. So my master's is in music industry, and I used to roadie for bands and things like that. And so
wow.
I kind of apply that aesthetic to nonprofit work. I guess it would be the easiest way to put it. So we got a street performing ordinance passed in our city. We got the entertainment district expanded, just things like that. And then generally throw art markets and stuff.
So you play music?
No.
Okay.
One would think. I'm the only graduate from Troy's School of Music that can't read music. Funny story. My undergraduate is in anthropology, and because poverty suits me, and so when I 2008, the recession hit. I got laid off from my job, and
Right.
I basically kicked around the for about 2 years unemployed. And over that time, that's when I started roadieing for bands, and I did a lot of music writing, not writing songs, but like writing for bands, press packs, that kind of stuff, freelance
Okay.
writing. And I was like, man, I really like doing this. I think I'd want to turn this to a career. And so I enrolled at my alma mater because I was thinking, oh, I'll just get another bachelor's degree because I already have all the core classes done.
Right.
And then I learned that I would have to learn to play the piano, learn to read music, and learn one other instrument, basically my first semester, while working full time at a pizza place to pay my bills. And I said, well, that's never going to work.
Oh,
So I was
yeah.
about to
Not
drop
feasible.
out. No, I was going to drop out before they billed me, before the drop date hit. But the graduate assistant was like, hey, why don't you've already got a degree. Why don't you get your master's in it? You don't have to we don't do recitals in the master's program. All we do is the business side of things. So I was like, well, what the hell? Let's do it.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
you ended up getting your master's. Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I've had an odd life.
Yeah. Oh, well, trust me. I mean, for anybody who is interested, you need to go check out. Okay, I know you can see at the bottom of the screen the website Tales by Bob, which is just this link tree of all the things that Bob has his fingers in, and it's fascinating. We're gonna dip into some of it. I know we're not gonna have time to cover everything, but it's pretty crazy. So gosh, where to start? Where do you want to start? I know you have your hands in writing fiction. You have your hands in
Yep.
TTRPGs. You have your hands. I hear you're big in the like Comic-Con scenes. You attend, or not Comic-Cons,
Yeah.
but conventions.
Yeah.
And you have a blog that I find very interesting. Like, there's so much. Where do you want to start?
I mean, let's start with my books. I guess that's where my primary focus is these days, and everything else kind of
Supports that.
feeds into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, let's talk
I've-
about this. The fact that you described this main character as, what did you say, redneck wizard, or I think I read somewhere
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
backwoods.
Yep.
Where'd it go? Degenerate backwoods
Yeah.
wizard with a crippling meth addiction.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would
No,
love to hear about the inspiration behind this and a little bit about the story if you can, without spoiling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. So I'm from Deep South Alabama. I mean, real backwoods. For context, my graduating class had 44 people in it. And the county I'm from has the most dirt roads of any county in Alabama, which has a lot of dirt roads.
Can you,
I think the population
for someone like, I'm very bad at geography, so can you tell me,
Yeah.
like, is this like northern Alabama, southern, like where?
South Central. I'm from an hour south of Montgomery, which Montgomery is kind
Okay.
of middle of the state.
Okay.
So I'm from an hour south of there. The entire population of our county is 11,000 people.
Okay.
It's small.
Wow.
And so that's where I'm from. And I basically the books are set in the county I'm from. I just filed the serial numbers off
Right.
and
Yeah.
changed the name. So but the area I'm from is it's very poverty stricken, and there's rampant issues with drug addiction. The meth craze hit hard. And I've just especially coming out of the kind of the underground music scene, I have known a lot of people who their lives have been essentially destroyed by drugs.
Oh.
And I have people that I'm basically just waiting on a phone call, and it sucks. It's really awful.
Yeah.
And they're great people. And but partly it's I'm from the conservative South, so drug use is looked upon as a moral failing in a lot of cases, when that's not. It's addiction is a disease. It's a medical issue.
Right.
It's not a moral failing. And so what my goal here is I want to write a series that really showcases the South, the good parts and the bad. Like Alabama is one of the most gorgeous states you could be in. But then you round a corner and there's a decaying mobile home,
Yeah.
But then it's also trying to write one of these stories for these people that some of these people are not going to have happy endings. So writing a story where the person has a happy ending is so that's why the subtitle of the series is The Redemption of Howard Marsh, because by the time he reaches the end, he will have kicked his addiction. He will have repaired the relationships with his family. He'll still be a redneck. I mean, that
Right.
you can't change that.
Can't take the redneck out of this.
Yeah. So, but just try to write a happy ending on a story that doesn't typically get one, and work in wizardry along the way, because I'm a big nerd. So
Yeah. Yeah. So can we talk about magic since there's magic involved? Is it like a hard magic system, a soft magic system?
It's definitely soft. It's a soft magic system that is somewhat based in like Southern hoodoo traditions.
Ooh.
The so bizarrely, the one of the early inspirations for this was I used to in college give essentially do like ghost tours kind of
Uh-huh.
deal. I don't really believe in ghosts, but life would be a lot cooler if they were
If they
real.
were
So I
real,
just
yeah.
yeah, so I just treat it like they are. And so, but we were in a cemetery in very rural Alabama, and I found what's called a spell jar. It's basically, in the simplest form, it's a jar that has someone's name written on a piece of paper tucked inside. And if you want something good to happen to them, you put honey inside. If you want something bad to happen, you put vinegar. And I just find this jar on a grave. It's midnight in the cemetery, and I don't know what it is. This plot had no headstone, so I initially just assumed that someone had made their own kind of bootleg headstone. But I started doing some research and realized, oh, this is a spell jar. And so I went back and opened it, and I actually still have that jar to this day. I kept it. Supposedly, when you open the jar, it releases the magic, and I opened the jar too because I wanted to know if it was vinegar or honey, and they put vinegar in there. So if
Oh.
magic is real, I saved someone from a bad curse. So
Okay, I was gonna say, are
I,
you by hoodoo law, are you supposed to open the jar or okay?
no, I don't. I don't think so. I don't think so. I just blunder through life.
Yeah. Wow, that's
so
so
it,
interesting.
So spell jars are a common form of magic that crops up in this. The villain of the kind of continuing villain of the series, besides himself, is his grandmother. His grandmother is the most powerful witch in the county, but she's
Yeah.
a very bad person. And she is known for these spell jars. And as the
Oh.
series goes, he kind of starts learning how to create his own spell jars.
So did the spell jar, was that like that was the initial inspiration for this?
So weirdly, I actually wrote stories set in this world before I had the idea for it. Like one of the very first stories I ever had published was a story called The Jar, and it was published in a collection called Southern Haints 3 or something like that. I forget the exact title. But that was essentially a Jubal County story without me realizing it. I got my start as a horror writer, so I wrote a bunch of horror short stories, and a number of those stories kind of created the world for it.
Yeah.
And then as I kind of kept kind of exploring that space, and I started another real inspiration is there's a podcast called S Town, S dash 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 town. It's about an eccentric guy in West Alabama, and it's really really well done. And it's like an 8 episode. It's very short. It's only like 8 episodes, and so it's about this eccentric guy in West Alabama and a potential murder mystery, yada yada yada. Kind of starts out kind of true crime, but quickly becomes a character study.
Right.
So listening to that, I was like, I know people exactly like this guy, the eccentric guy out in the country, And I was
Yeah.
like, man, if anyone was a wizard, it'd be that guy. And I was like, well, what if I made him? What if I made him a wizard?
What if he
And
was?
so that's kind of and then everything just kind of tied together. It's like the spell jars, and then these horror stories that I'd already had written, kind of laying the framework, and then creating this character. And there was a bunch of weird little inspirations. I was part of a social club that supported punk music in the Southeast, and we rented a storage shed as a clubhouse. And we had a club member that basically lived there. Like, he just spent all his time there.
Yeah.
And so Howard in the series, he's homeless. He lives in a storage shed. And it was inspired by my buddy who just spent all his time in the storage shed,
That's
So
crazy.
it's a bunch of little things like that. kind of all
Yeah.
came together at once.
Wow. And
So
you have, in this series, you have 6 out, 5
yeah,
books? That's
6.
wild. That is great. And no
Yeah.
end yet, right? You've got more coming on this
Mhm.
series, right?
Yeah. So it's
Wow.
going to be 3 somewhat self-contained 6-book arcs. And actually, each book is composed of 2 novellas. So each book has 2 self-contained mysteries in them, and so by the time all said and done, there'll be 36 little mysteries to go
Wow.
through. But essentially, it's 6 books, and then it'll be 6 books, and then 6 books. With
Yeah.
there'll be like a time jump between each
So
one.
you're definitely
So
creating like your own little universe, and you've got the little short stories
yeah,
beforehand, and that's
yeah.
pretty cool.
Uh,
I love
and
this.
that's actually what I'm working on. The thing I'm currently writing is a horror spinoff that is set in Jubal County,
Hmm.
and the next book I have coming out is a Southern Gothic collection of short stories and novellas that is set in Jubal County. So
Okay.
expanding the world.
Right, right. So, do you write full time, or is this kind of on the side?
Oh
Oh no.
no, what a glorious tale that would be. No, and honestly, like I'm almost to the point where if it wasn't for health insurance, I think I could do it.
Probably do it. Yeah.
But I'm old and getting older, and health insurance is expensive and only going to get more expensive.
Right.
So, but by day I'm a
Health
technical
insurance.
writer. Yeah,
What
yeah.
did you say?
If not by day, I'm a technical writer
Oh,
for
okay.
state government. So
Okay.
that,
What is
that's
it? What does
that's
that
what pays the
entail?
bills.
Can you explain that a little bit
Yeah,
for the folks who don't know what a technical writer, like, not?
yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, what happened was I have a buddy that worked for a state agency that they got audited every 3 years by the IRS, and what they kept getting dinged on was not having any written policy. And so they knew I was a writer, and they're like, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to work for us? Like, get out of the night shift warehouse job that my doctor literally told me was killing me." Yes,
Yeah,
I would
sure.
be interested. And so they brought me on, and basically what I do is I write policy that needs writing, but then I also sit down with our IT department. I'm part of our IT department,
Got it.
and I sit down with them, and as they are documenting new processes, either I just write all the documentation for it, or I take whatever documentation they already have and make it understandable to
Right.
where someone who, with no real background in it, could take this
Come in.
document,
Yeah.
even if they didn't know what they were doing, they could at least do the steps. They might not understand the steps, what the steps are doing, but they could at least complete the process from the
Right.
documentation that was given.
Yeah, see, now I
So,
understand that. I had a job before my creative life. I had an accounting background, and I stepped into a job where it was basically the rules were, if this dentist is wearing a purple sock on Monday, you pay him this much. But if the same dentist is wearing a red sock on Sundays and he's got a football in his mouth, then you pay him this. Like, there were the strangest rules that only I could keep straight because I documented everything. And I had to
yeah,
document everything because if I got hit by a bus, someone would need to come in and be able to do my job. So I completely understand that.
yeah.
That makes sense to me now. So I'm curious, since this is your day job, does any of that kind of bleed into your writing at all? Do you use any of that? No? No crossover. Okay.
No. It's because there's such different types of writing. Like
Yeah.
basically for good technical writing, you strip all emotion out of it. It's kind
Boy,
of
does
like
that feel
almost
soul-sucking, or
anti-writing.
do you enjoy it?
I enjoy it.
Is it
I
like a
enjoy my
palate
job.
cleanser?
I'd never thought about it like that, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
But also, just because I came in and got a lot of this process writing and documentation done pretty early on, so now I do a lot more like in the project management space,
I
and that I
see.
really enjoy.
Yeah.
So I still document as things come up, but the bulk of my time is actually not spent writing anymore. That first
Got it.
6 months to a year I was there, it was all writing all day, all the time,
Yeah.
and it got mind numbing because you're writing, policies for the IRS. It's
So
not
dry.
riveting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so dry. So dry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like, sorry, my brain explodes sometimes when I'm trying to form my thoughts. When you were writing this series, was there any part of it, world building wise, that you struggled to find or to figure out?
I'll tell you the biggest issue I've had, and I think I eventually got it, is just dealing with such a sensitive issue of drug abuse, drug
Right.
addiction. Like he actually has, because he was never trained to use his magic, he has basically learned that he can take a lot of drugs and burn off that energy to fuel his spells.
Oh,
So like finding that line between, yes, he's using drugs to fuel his magic,
right.
but then also not glorifying that. Like I
Right.
try and show that, like, drug like yes, he is using this as a shortcut, but literally anyone who has actually learned to use their magic properly is doing better at it than him. Like, he's
Right.
found a shortcut, but it's not a good shortcut. But also just showing that these drugs have effects on his life. So that was a real struggle, because like I've never done drugs. I like you. Most people in my day-to-day life would probably be very surprised by that. But like I've just never done drugs.
Yeah.
I'm from the backwoods. At 14, I started drinking too heavily, and I realized that was my vice.
Yeah.
And so I already had my vice. I didn't need another, so I never went down the drugs route. And so,
Right.
but writing drug use without ever having done drugs and being sensitive to the very real issues there, that was very much a struggle. And then also, like, the South is just like, again, I try and show the good sides and the bad side. The South is still very racist. I like, you run into it everywhere, both in like overt ways but in subtle ways. And so that's not necessarily my story to tell, I
Right.
feel like, but still showing that without trying to steal, a POC voice from
Right.
telling this story, I guess. So my issues are less on the creative side and more on
Yeah.
just the sensitivity side, being aware that I'm intentionally privileged. I don't necessarily need to be stealing other people's opportunities to tell these types of stories, but while still acknowledging that these are very real issues,
Right.
so.
So how did you manage that? Did you have like folks who were in maybe those particular situations read and like provide feedback, or how did you deal with that?
So, I did have some people read. I very shoestring budget here all around. So
Right.
I was never able to hire a diversity reader. That is something that I would love to be able to do on down the road.
Right.
I always kind of have imagined that my dream here is to be the Michael J. Sullivan, where I sell 90,000 copies of these books, and then Orbit comes along and it's like, oh, hey, we'd love to publish these for you. And I'm like, okay, Orbit, let's do that.
Yeah.
And then they will pay for a sensitivity reader,
Right.
but part of it was like, I did post on Reddit some asking about basically about the issue of, talking about like using drug use as a plot device,
Right. Right.
so I kind of crowdsourced some answers that way. And like, while I have never done drugs, a huge I'm one of the very few people I know that have not done, and I, like I said, I know a lot of people that, they have really struggled with drug addiction, and they were kind of resources I could talk to,
Right.
but mostly just kind of listening. And the thing about it is like, the internet is a terrible and wonderful place, so there's lots of things where you can go read. Like, for me, like, I had a scene recently where I was trying to describe a black woman's hair, and
Yeah.
and it's one of those things that I'm not an expert, but I know that that's a real pitfall that people fall into,
Yes.
in how you describe it. So I went, found a guide, like, here is a person of color talking about, here are acceptable ways to describe that are non-offensive. Here are ways that you probably don't realize are offensive, but
Right.
are, so reading a guide like that, so I can go in there and describe it in such a way that because, even people with the best of intentions, they won't know when they've messed up. So
Right.
wherever I can, I do try and go and find resources like that,
Yeah.
and just listen. That's the main thing. Just listen to what people are saying.
Yeah, that's
So.
that's a really good tip, actually. I mean, definitely going out. It's kind of, I would think it's a little bit scary to go to the interwebs and say, "Hey, I'm writing a book on this, and how do I handle this?" And then, boy, it's like opening yourself up for the comments. But
Yeah.
I think it's a smart thing to do, definitely, to do the research before you put your product out there, so you're showing everyone that you're doing the research and the time, giving it its due process.
Yeah. And then, it's one of those deals like at the back of every book, I put a page there like, hey, if you're reading this and you're struggling, if you're one of the people struggling with substance addiction, here are resources. So, I kind of put
That's
stuff like that
great.
in there. So hopefully it pays off for someone,
Yeah. I love
So
that. I
I
mean, that
have,
would probably be the
yeah.
best compliment, right? For someone to read your book and say, like, hey, I saw that page in the back and I called the number and it
Yeah.
helped.
Yeah,
Wow.
the closest thing I've had was I was at a very small convention, at MagicCon in Brundage, Alabama, and I was a guest at that, and so but I was also vending, and I had a guy come up and he kind of, oh, what do you got going on here? He's like, and I explained, and that's my pitch. Every person comes up to ask, I say, I write a series about a redneck wizard with a crippling meth addiction, and 30% of people are like, oh my God, you have to tell me more. And then
Yes.
70% of people are like,
Meth.
okay. And they back away slowly, but this guy was like, oh my God, I was a meth addict for like 10 years. This is
Yeah.
amazing. And like he went on TikTok and like live streamed on TikTok to his followers, like, man, this
Wow.
is so cool. Like it's, someone, so I just thought that was kind of neat. But yeah, I have not had anyone say, oh, hey, I utilized the resources in the back of the book, but I also
Right.
don't expect anyone to tell me that,
Yeah.
I just hope
Yeah.
that someone does, that
Yeah.
ideally no one would need it, but if someone does need it, I hope that maybe that gets through to them somehow. So
Yeah. That's so cool. I hope that happens for you. I mean, that sounds.
yeah.
Wait. Let me rethink how that sounds. But you get what I'm saying.
No, yeah,
Okay.
no, 100%.
Yeah.
So
So let's pivot real quick then to you mentioned that you were at a con. So you don't go there just to vend. I saw you were a speaker on several panels, and I'm sure that's
yeah,
probably the norm for you, right?
it's gotten to that point. It's been
Yeah.
something I've been building to for a long time. If I could do anything for a living, it'd be panelist at convention. Like that,
Yeah.
I love it so much. But I started really small, just at like any sort of small local con. I would just approach them, and because I especially early on, I didn't know anyone who was doing anything like what I was doing.
Yeah.
Writing anything like that, and so I didn't know people who did panels at cons. I had been, I'd been going to Dragon Con for years and years, and for those who don't know, Dragon Con is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, like Comic Con. It's a fan
Yes.
run convention in Atlanta that I think this year is 70,000 people.
Wow.
And so it's my favorite weekend of the year. But so like I didn't know any of those people. I didn't know how anyone got on panels. So I would just reach out to like small local cons and say, hey, if you'll let me, I'll do a panel for you. I'll moderate it. If I can find people to be on it, I will. If not, I'll just do it by myself. And so I did that. I did a lot of like conventions where I would do one panel, whatever they would let me do. And then just as time has gone by, as I've networked and built more connections. Dragon Con I did 6 at Dragon Con this year, which is the most I had done at an
That's a
event.
lot.
But I have it is. But Multiverse I have coming up in October, and I'll be doing 7 at it.
Wow.
And then Conjuration is after that. I'll be doing somewhere between 6 and 7 or 8 on that as well.
Right.
So
do you just like shut down your booth during that time, or do you have some helpers that kind of man your booth while you're going to talk?
yeah. So it depends. It depends on the convention.
Yeah.
I did Con Carolinas earlier in the year, and I was by myself. And so I just shut down my booth for while I was gone to the panel.
Yeah.
Which is not ideal,
Yeah.
but
Could be missing out, but yeah.
well, but there's a trade-off there because doing panels really helps book sales.
Yeah.
People see you, and if
It
you
gets
can
your name
catch their
out.
interest, they'll follow you back to your booth. But then at a lot of smaller cons, me and a fellow author named Ben Meeks, wherever we can, we do events together, and we will share a table. And typically, we try to not be on the same panels, so that one of us can be back at the booth. And then at Dragon Con, me and it was again Ben Meeks, he organized it, but it was like 22 authors. We came together
Wow.
to do one booth, because a table, like a corner booth at Dragon Con, I think next year is like $3,200.
Wow. So you guys just kind of like, it's like a share.
We all split the cost on that. Like Ben figures out what the share is for each person to pay in. And then I think this year it was like 175 each that we had to pay in. And then he handles all the taxes and all that kind of stuff and the licensing, and then he takes a percentage of sales is how that works. But because of that, he just ran the booth, and we all authors took turns being there, either doing signings or just helping. And so that's how that worked for Dragon Con. But that's not the norm, because most events are more affordable.
Yeah. I'm going to call this out as a good tip for authors, because I would not have thought about that. Going to smaller cons and saying, hey, do you need a panel? Like, I'll just build one for you. I'll create one. And or sharing a booth with other authors. Like, I think that's such a smart idea. It's like a co-op kind of like, So
if you will look,
you guys.
a lot of these cons have panel submission forms, and you can put on there, it's like, hey, I would like to see a panel about this, or you can say, hey, I'm an expert in X, Y, or Z. The one I've most commonly given is how to get published, and it's kind of where I give an overview of the publishing industry today and what kind of your two or three main avenues are to get your books out there. And so that one's an easy sell, and they're always pretty well attended. But then, you can get really niche. I've pitched, like at Dragon Con, I pitched to them, I was like, hey, I would love to do a panel on one-sheet RPGs, which is a very niche topic within a fairly niche topic. And they were like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's set this up. So
that's so cool.
And my biggest thing is just ask. Like, I know it's hard. That was really hard for me early on, was the confidence to ask, getting that. But like I've literally never had anyone be mean to me. At worst, they've said no.
Yeah. I think I had a similar conversation with another author about, like, just what's the worst that can happen, And I think as authors, I mean, whether you're going self-publishing or traditional, like, you have to kind of learn how to fight for yourself to make it. So traditional publishing, they do not, most would-be trad published authors, I think, would be surprised at how little traditional publishers will actually help you. You're still going to be, unless you're that 1 in 1,000, Rothfuss, Martin, someone, because traditional publishing is gambling. They put out 5,000 books in a year and put no money behind any of them, and the one that starts selling, they put all their money on that. So you're going to have to do all your own marketing to a large degree. If you're lucky, they'll tweet out your book, but it's nice to say I've been published by Orbit. That would be really cool. I would I wouldn't turn that down. So wow. So man, you're making it so easy for me. I love this. You just start pulling in topics, and I'm like, this is the best way to just pivot to your one-page RPGs. And that you have stuff on drive-through, you have stuff on what is this, itch.io?
Yep. Itch.io.
I have not actually gone to that site before, and so I started poking around.
Oh, you should.
This is interesting. I gotta find it
Itch
again.
is great. So all my stuff is on, it's the same stuff on both sites. It's just two different markets. Drive-thru RPG is very much tabletop RPG focused. Itch is not actually tabletop gaming focused. It's more indie video gaming focused, but they do have a really thriving TTRPG space on there, and actually the bar to entry is a little lower. It's easier to get your stuff on Itch than Drive-thru RPG. And I typically sell a little better on Itch. It's easier to do bundles. Like, pretty much all my games, you can go buy every one of them in a bundle for $5. Because this is not something that I do. Like, this is not my focus.
Right.
And so for me, it's just, this is another little revenue stream. At some point, I'm going to take all these games and actually really refine them and put them into a book, but for now they're just a bundle on itch. You can get them all. So
They're
but yeah,
fascinating. There's a lot on there, folks. You
love
guys
them.
got to check this out. Some of these I was poking around because just the titles alone, or the cover page. Where was
Yeah.
the one? It was Nuns with Guns.
Yeah.
I had to click on that one.
Yeah.
Seek Ye Small Gods in Hidden Places. I love that title.
Yeah. So that's a journaling game. It's a solo RPG. And it's a genre I'm very interested in. I haven't done a lot in that space, but the idea is it's quasi just a series of writing prompts, but they're called journaling games. And that one is basically what triggered it for me was I was in a Wendy's drive-through of all places, and I saw this where this drain was running into a cut through on a bush, and it almost looked like a shrine. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there's just a small god that lived there in that shrine? So the idea is to find mundane little nooks and crannies around you and to write about what god is there. So it's fun little stuff like that.
I love it. That's the kind of world building I do, where, well, for me, it's usually nature and science stuff that I see that I think's cool. And all of a sudden my brain goes, but it could also do this, and it can also do this, and it lives right here. And so
yeah,
that's really neat. A journaling game. I had never, I was wondering, I'm glad you went into that. I was going to ask because I read the description and I was, I don't know exactly what it is, but that is really cool.
What turned me onto them, there was a very popular one at one point called Wretched and Alone, I think. And they did a open gaming license for it. So basically, but how that game works, it's a journaling game that you play with a deck of cards. And basically you draw a card and it gives you a prompt kind of deal, and they're all very thematic. Mine, so I ended up they did a game jam for a Wretched Alone games, and I did one of basically like a mine collapse, and you're a worker in this mine. It collapses, and you're alone in the dark with just your lantern, and you draw a card to see what type of events happen. And they're designed in such a way that there is a way to escape and live, but it's very unlikely. Most of these, your chance of actually living in most Wretched and Alone games is less than 1%.
Right. It sounds like Oregon Trail.
Yeah, they're not very happy games. And so that was kind of what turned me on to journaling games. Now that's a much more complicated version of than most journaling games.
Right.
But that was kind of my window into that world, and then I just kind of have played around with it a little bit since.
Do you have a favorite? I mean, folks, for those of you who have not yet checked this site, there's a lot. I can't even count them all right now just by staring at this.
Yeah.
I'm guessing, I don't know, 30 to 50?
It's like 34, 35, I think.
Okay.
So my two favorites, one is a one-sheet RPG. It's called Three Octopuses in a Trench Coat.
Yes, I see it here.
It is, you literally, you have to have 3 players and a GM, but you play 3 octopuses in an aquarium that you have grabbed a trench coat and are trying to escape.
That sounds fantastic.
And then the other, this one's more serious, but the idea is, it's called A Witch at the Edge of the Woods, and it's a longer game. It's not a one sheet, but it is basically all the players play members of a party traveling through the New England wilderness around the time of the Salem witch trials. And events happen that lead you to believe that one of you is a witch, and at the end of the journey you're basically prompted to who do you turn over as the witch kind of deal.
And see if you're right.
Quick little spoiler, there is no witch. So but listeners,
just forget you heard that. Buy it anyway. It's a lot of fun.
There's rules in there where you can make it, make someone be the witch, but as written, the idea is to show how quickly you can spin out and, here's all that, this person's got to be the witch, but they're not. It's kind of to show about the hysteria of the Salem witch trials and how quickly stuff can go off the rails. So
I feel like I can see your horror, your affinity to horror here. I mean, aside from the fact that you have a bunch of horror one-page games, some of the other ones in the other genres look like they lean towards horror as well. This must be your favorite time of year. Pretty soon.
Oh, it is. Oh, absolutely. No, like I said, I started as a horror writer and everything I write tends to end up having horror elements in it. Like
Right.
my urban fantasy series, it's not horror enough to be called horror, but there are scenes in it that are horrific, and there are a lot of the creatures are more on the horror spectrum. One recurring character is called the hog in the road, and it's a demon. It's the biblical story where Jesus drives the demons into the herd of swine and they all jump off a cliff.
Oh,
This
yeah.
hog claims to be the last remaining one of those hogs, and it's a
Oh,
demon that you
yeah.
can summon up, and it'll answer you questions about roads. But it's very much a horror figure that crops up in this. And then the first my one brush with traditional publishing was early on in my career. A small press put out a number of collections of I wrote steampunk short stories, and they were all tended to be kind of horror based. They were steampunk fantasy that had a lot of horror elements into it. So everything I write ends up having some horror in it,
Something,
if
yeah.
it's not just straight up horror. So because that's
That's
my
what you
favorite.
love.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How cool. I mean, I love horror. We already usually like the end of August is when my brain starts like I want to watch all the movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
my
Yeah.
season.
My kiddo is now old enough that I recently just asked on Facebook, like people with children of this age and sensibility, what horror movie recommendations do you have? So I've got a
Ooh.
list, and we're going to start watching those building up towards Halloween. So
Nice. Oh,
um,
that's fun.
we'll see how it goes.
Can I ask what's a few of the top recommendations?
The probably like the number one recommendation, which unfortunately is not on any of the streaming services I have, was Ernest Scared Stupid.
Oh gosh.
Um, which I was like, yeah,
My
I love that
husband
movie
still
growing up.
loves that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and Hocus Pocus got recommended a lot, but the kiddo has seen Hocus Pocus, so
Right.
that one's like good recommendation.
Hmm.
They do enjoy that movie. It's just unfortunately that was one we've already done.
Right.
And
Right.
Little Shop of Horrors got recommended a lot,
Oh, okay.
which the kiddo likes kind of musical theater,
Okay.
and so I think that might be a good fit as well. So
Right. I was gonna
and that
say if
one
they
I
don't
think I
like
can't.
musicals, then that might not work. But
Yeah, they love Hamilton, so we're a big Hamilton household here.
good.
So I think that might be a fit.
Cool.
What like two different people recommended The Ring, and I was like, I think it's been a long time since you've seen The Ring, because I get that it's PG-13, but that is a real scary movie. So
Yeah. That to this day, that is the one movie that like haunts me when my husband is gone on graveyard shift and I have to go to the bathroom at night and there's no lights. Like that's my nightmare. Still. So
yeah,
I get it.
mine is Paranormal Activity.
Ooh,
Found footage
yes.
is my favorite genre of horror movie.
Yeah.
And that movie was so terrifying. I saw it in theaters by myself. It was so terrifying. My brother had seen it the night before and knew how freaked out I would be. So when I got home, he had cut on every light in the house between the front door and my bedroom, so I wouldn't have to walk to my bedroom in the dark.
Oh no.
So
Oh my
I love
gosh.
that movie so much.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so wanted to touch on. Oh, that's right. You mentioned that I mentioned. So one of us mentioned that you have a blog, and what I loved in your bio was that, and you weren't the only person who mentioned it to me. I think Penelope or Journey also mentioned it to me that you're really big on transparency. And that you like to share like your sales and your numbers and everything. Can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that? I find that to be a little
Yeah.
unique.
So this is something I'm intensely passionate about, not just in the writing space, but just in life in general. I'm kind of one of those people that I feel like if everyone had their bank account, like their pay stub implanted over their head,
Hmm.
I feel like there'd be a lot less angst in the world. I don't know. I'm naive in a
No,
lot of
I
ways,
don't think
but
so. I agree
but
with you. I mean,
so,
there's a lot of the, like keeping up with the Joneses and stuff, and it's like, but you don't know how
yeah,
much credit
it's
they're digging
crazy.
themselves into.
Yeah, and so it's very much something that, in like, I work for the state of Alabama. You can
Mhm.
literally go look up what I get paid
Right.
online.
Right.
We have transparency in that, and I think that's a great idea. Anyway, but when I got started out early on, especially when I self-pubbed my first book, I really struggled with, I don't know if I'm doing good, if I'm doing bad.
There was
I
no
don't know.
gauge.
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what good looks like. Obviously, selling 90,000 copies is good, but hey, these are authors that I feel that I'm, if not at the same level, I'm in the same ballpark with. What do their sales look like? And no one really talks about that kind of stuff. Yes, if you network with them, and so it's very common at conventions. It's called BarCon. After the
Mhm.
convention winds down, all the authors go to the bar and hang out together, and we call it BarCon, and we just sit around, talk shop, hang out,
Yeah.
unwind from the day. It's fantastic. And in those places, yes, you can get those kind of answers. But when I started out, I had not networked to that degree. I did not have people I could go and ask. So when I started it, it was initially called 365 to 1K, because my goal was within 365 days, I wanted to be earning $1,000. That was my goal.
Yeah.
But at that time when I started it, I was doing a lot of freelance writing, which paid fairly decent. But as I transitioned, I shifted my focus from freelance writing to self-publishing, and self-publishing, just especially early on, did not pay what freelance writing was doing.
Right.
So I kind of took that pressure off myself. So now it's just my transparency project. But yeah, every time I launch a book, I break down the numbers. How many copies did I give away? What was my marketing like for it? How many copies I sold over the launch window? My launch window is typically 5 days.
Mhm.
And then over 30 days, what did it look like? What day what day of the week was it? What posts did I make on social media? That kind of stuff. But then even on a monthly basis, every month I recap how my social media either grew or shrank.
Mhm.
Did I have signups to my email list? Did I just closed down my Twitter last month? So I was like, I used to track my Twitter stats. I don't do that anymore. I'm not on Twitter. And so it's stuff like that. But then also the numbers, like how much money did I make on Itch? How much money did I make selling T-shirts? How much money did I get from this was the first year I was able to track appearance fees. I've gotten a couple of appearance fees for guesting at con.
Wow.
And that's not common. That's not common. And I really, really lucked into those. It'll be a long time, I imagine, before I get any more of those. That was just bizarre fluke, really lucky occurrences.
Okay.
But then, so stuff like that. And so I track all that. So the 81, and I share it around like, hey, look, if you want to know, this is what sales look like for me. I'm not going to say they're going to look like this for you if you do the same thing, but at least he's doing this. Here's how it's working out for him.
Right.
And so you at least have a reference. So
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's so important. I've talked about it before on some of the other interviews, but I know when I first started my writing journey that there were so many people, when I'm on online forums that are just getting into writing, thinking I'm going to write the big one and I'm going to make like $1 million on my first book because it's so special. And it's like, you really got to kind of, there's no way to show people that that's not going to happen unless they do it. I guess, I mean, for YouTube, like I guess I consider myself a YouTuber now. There's analytics you can download and you can look at other people's YouTube analytics as well. Like, but we can't do that for other authors.
No.
So
No. And I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's something that I would, it's very cliche, but be the change you want to see.
yeah.
This was something that I wanted and was not able to find. And so I was like, well, I'll just do it. And hopefully other people will start following suit. And like, I was honestly like, I get very little engagement on those posts. And so to the point where I was like, I don't know that anyone's actually paying attention. But actually at Dragon Con, I had a number of people who told me, it's like, hey, no, I read every one of those. Like, I appreciate you doing that. And
That's
in my head, I'm
nice.
like, would it kill you to click a like button? So I know. But it's like, people are paying attention. But I think just people get so caught up in, it's almost like they don't want to admit publicly that they were reading this, because I get it. There's people just have so many. Everyone has their baggage,
Right.
and I get it. I guess.
I will say though, when I had my interview with Penelope, even I I write. I don't know that I can call myself an author. I don't have any books out there. I have short stories, but
You can totally 100% call yourself.
thank you. I will do that. I mean, I don't know. It feels a little
Yeah.
like, the imposter syndrome. But Penelope.
No, it's very real.
Yeah, it is. It is. Penelope opened my eyes a little bit to how important it is for people to leave reviews on books. Because as a person who consumes books, I've never left a single review on a book, and never, even though we use social media all the time, there was no connection in my brain to this like button correlates to this person's success, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I had that interview with Penelope recently that I went, gosh, of course, yeah, from now on I will be leaving reviews on books. And so takeaway to viewers, yes, if you see something that you really like, please do something to let them know that you like it, whether, technology based, even, like it, share it, whatever, because that just helps. It does. It's such a little thing.
Yeah.
So anyway,
well, you talk about imposter syndrome. Like early on, I thought my books were good, I was like, they were good to a point where I was confident putting them out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no validation. Had I gotten family members to read it? Sure. I don't really have beta readers. I don't do ARC copies, things like that. Should I? Probably yes. But I don't. I've looked deep within myself, and I am not that person.
At least you can be self-aware enough to say so.
Yeah. But it was, of course, your first couple of reviews are, your friends and family. But what really helped me kind of realize, oh, okay, my books are actually not terrible, was when I started getting reviews from absolute strangers on the internet saying, hey, I really like this. And then just as you go, when you're in the trenches, it's hard to see that progression. Everything just kind of feels like you're in the same space until you hit a point where you have that realization. So I've had two moments here recently that kind of jarred me, oh, hey, you're farther along than you thought you were. I had a review get left that was basically I've read this series 2 times now, and I'm rereading it in anticipation of book 6 coming out. So it was to me, it was someone didn't just read them; they reread them. What the hell? That was baffling to me. And the other was actually just a blog post about this, where I am big on defining success for yourself. Do not measure what success means to you against anyone else. Your success is going to be very different from my success, and so I'm big on making markers. I have what I call my success markers, and it's all things that I tick the box. I've done this thing, I count that as a success, tick that box, and then they're in tiers. Here are my success markers that I would like to tick off in the near term versus the long term.
Yeah.
And so one of my success markers was I wanted to do 6 panels at Dragon. Last year I did 1. And I was like, man, if I could just get to the point where I've done 6 panels at DragonCon, I think I'll have really gotten somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, how DragonCon works is you have to apply to be a guest, but there's only 300 or 400 people that get guest status. But you can apply to be a guest, but you tell them that you want to be an attending professional, an attending pro. And if they accept you, you don't get a hotel room or yada, yada, yada. But basically, they put you on the roster, and all the different track directors, the writing track, the Star Wars track, the track, whatever track, your name is on there with your qualifications. And if they, I think they'd be a good fit for this panel, they'll add you on. It makes it very easy to get on panels. I did not get attending pro status, so I had to really network my way in, but I did it. I got 6 panels this year. I got 1 on the writing track because I'm friends with the track director there. We've built a connection over the past few years, and she very graciously threw me out a panel with Sherilyn Kenyon of all people. My mind was blown.
That's awesome.
And then the digital media track, I've just been paying attention to their stuff. I've talked to them over the years, and they let me jump on 3 I moderated a panel called Podcasting for Authors, and then jumped on 2 others. And then the tabletop track, I've just been reaching out over the years, and they finally were like, you know what, Bob, this is the year. So that I was talking with an author named Patrick Duggan, who everyone should go check out. He's fantastic, and he was an attending pro. And we were just kind of talking about our weekends. And I was talking about I was not attending pro, but I got to where I was doing 6 panels this year, and I'm doing some vending. And he's like, Bob, I'm an attending pro, and I'm doing 6 panels. you're doing great.
Yeah.
And like for me to hear that from someone like Patrick Duggan, who is someone who's doing what I do, but so much better,
Yeah.
like say like, no, you're doing good. Like you're doing everything you need to be doing. And it's that outside validation that like you
Yes.
just don't get when you're day after day of me just plugging away at the laptop screen. You don't realize that you progressed along the path until someone from the outside can kind of put it into perspective for you, be it a comment, random comment online, or a friend that you've come to make at convention saying, hey, no, look, I was where you were 20 years ago. You're doing everything you need to be doing. Just keep at it,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Well, even so,
if
I
you
mean, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and you were like, oh, I don't know if I could call myself an author. Like, look, if you have finished something that you are
Mhm.
proud of, you're in my mind, you're an author. The people who are writers are the people that they talk about that they're going to get that book out there and they're going to finish it one day, and they just keep talking about it. And if they spend as much time writing as they spent talking about it, they would be done with the book by now.
Yeah.
Those are writers. If you have finished something, to me, you're an author. Because
that.
that's what, to me, what differentiates is you are an author because you have finished a product. Because I've heard this said in a variety of different ways that you can fix a bad page.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fix a page that doesn't exist.
A blank page. Yeah.
A blank page. So like you finished something, you're an author.
Yeah.
And there's no like, oh, well, someone published me or I self-pubbed or anything like that. That makes you an author. No, you finished something and you are ready now to take it to the next step. Whether that be let it sit in the chest, write 20 more things, and then dig it out of the chest when you're ready, or whether it's you just I'm putting all my focus on this. To me, that's you've got something that you can do something with, whether it be set it aside or really just take it to the next level. That's you've positioned yourself to be an author at that point.
Yeah. Well, and on the same or on the opposite side of the token, you set yourself a goal of being on 6 panels, and then it sounds like you got 6 panels and you went, yeah, but until somebody said, no, you got your 6 panels. You're doing great. So you got to celebrate the little wins.
So you do, and I normally I'm very good about that. What happened was at Dragon Con, I went into it knowing I was doing 4, and those tabletop ones did not come through until I was already at Dragon Con, and then it was all just so much of a haze, and I never really took the time to really just sit down and think about it. And like now, I do that. Like there will be a blog post coming at some point where it's like where I say, hey, I set myself a goal. I've achieved the goal. Boom. Yeah. I'm gonna toot my own horn for a second here. And I do that every. I had get 50 reviews on a book was one of my success markers. And when I got that, like, cool. Let me shout it out. Sell 1,000 books. Cool. Shout that out.
I love
now,
that.
like,
It
I've
kind of
sold over
sounds like
1,000.
you're I don't know if you're a like a video gamer, but they have like the little badges that you get where like you did 50 quests or whatever. Like you're just giving yourself little quests with little badges that you get.
No.
Yeah.
100%.
I love that.
That very much that style, because like and it's stuff that builds. Is sell 1,000 books. Now my goal is sell 5,000. And I think as of today I've sold like 2,400 books.
Wow.
So about halfway there. So, but it's like making things where you can give yourself small victories, I think is very important.
Yes.
Like a lot of people set out to write that book and they don't get there and they just get let down. And I just tell people, like, why don't you just give yourself an easy win and write a short story? Like maybe that you're never going to get rich writing short stories, but give yourself a victory, something that you can hang your hat on. Like, hey, I finished this. So now I did this. I can do that. It's just going to take a little longer. I sold 1,000 books. I can sell 5,000 books. It's just going to take longer to get there. But I at least have that, hey, I sold 1,000 books. Let me celebrate. Cool.
Yeah.
I've had my moment. Now let's move on.
Yeah. What's next?
What's going to get us to what's going to get us to so it's celebrating the victories while still pushing myself forward. Hope.
Yeah. Do you find keeping that fire to keep going, is there something that you have to focus on to keep that burning, or is it just the creativity aspect, like you just got to feed it?
It used to be very easy for me to just write all the time, and I never really struggled with that. But honestly, like, self-publishing is not easy. To do self-publishing is super easy. To do it well, or at least as well as I'm doing it, is hard. And so I design my covers. So that's a time-consuming process.
Hmm.
Luckily, my wife is amazing, and she can sit there and tell me, "Hey, those colors are all wrong," and we can fix that.
Right.
But like formatting books is time-consuming. I'm going through that now, and it's I can pretty easily slip from writer hat to marketing hat. Like that's
Hmm.
something I spend as much time, if not more time, marketing than I do writing at this,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But it's really hard for me to slip from writing to publishing and back. So whenever I'm actually like actively working to get a book out there, it's really hard for me to get any writing done.
Mm.
That's where I struggle. And then sometimes just life's crazy. If I can consistently write every day over the course of a week on week on week, it's super easy to keep that going. But oh hey, I was lucky to get married this year. I got married back in April, and
Congratulations.
thank you. But we had like a 2 week honeymoon overseas, and there was no writing there. It's time to
Hmm.
focus on my wife,
Right.
And so, but coming back and shifting back into that, it was hard to get that back rolling. So
Yeah.
if I have those periods where if like, oh, I'm in publishing mode, that's all I'm focusing on. It can take a little while to get back rolling. Like, but at the end of the day, is like I can't even if these books weren't selling, I would still be writing 'em.
Hmm.
Just because I have these stories that I want to get out,
I
and
was gonna say that's the number one thing I hear from writers and from authors is that if it's meant to be, you will make it happen. You have to. There's just no not
yeah.
telling the story.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even before I did not seriously start writing until until my last semester at grad school. Good timing. But before that, like I was, this is back in the days of third edition, 3.5 edition D&D. Like me and my buddies, we were going to start a D20 company. Like,
Yeah.
so like the need to get stories out has always been there. I just didn't know how to go about it. And then, I wrote a bunch of stories as a kid, as a teenager, stuff like that, but it kind of got lost in the mix. And then,
Yeah.
my last semester of grad school, I did NaNoWriMo, and I asked my friends if they wanted to die, if they were going to die in a short story, how would they like to die? And everyone who answered, I wrote their death into a short story, and that was the start. And so then, from that point on, I've been like, okay, self-publishing has come to a point. And like I said, I've had some brushes with traditional publishing.
Hmm.
I'm just a mild control freak, so it's got to be a really, really good situation for me to go traditional publishing.
Right. I get it.
So, and also, shockingly, meth wizards are not the most marketable of things. So traditional publishers haven't been just knocking down the door. It's
Oh my
strange. I don't know.
gosh. Have you written like a little one page about your character, this meth wizard? I mean, just calling it a meth wizard sounds like the perfect like class.
Yeah. So I've actually, I outside of the games that I've made, I just really like the indie RPG space.
Hmm.
I've basically quit playing D&D.
Hmm.
I would have quit a long time ago, but just my group was very D&D focused. But
Right.
we've actually been playing a Morkborg recently. I'm real big on Morkborg. I really like Troika,
Uh-huh.
and so they're both simple-ish games that have open gaming licenses. And so I'm actually turning the world of Jubal County into I have made Meth Wizard as a Morkborg class, basically.
Interesting.
So that will eventually be coming
That's
out at some
cool.
point.
Yeah, then you can market that at your booth. Like, hey, you read my books. Now you can be a meth wizard.
Exactly. No, exactly. And here's another tip. We were talking earlier about like what helps at selling at conventions.
Mhm.
Where I've had really good experiences is when you can have a variety of different authors at one table.
Mhm.
So me and Ben work really great together. Unfortunately, we both write urban fantasy that's set in the deep south. His is about a were otter in Georgia. Mine's about a meth wizard in Alabama. They're very different, but at the same time, they're urban fantasy books that appeal to urban fantasy readers.
Right.
But when we can get at tables where it's us and someone who's writing high fantasy and someone who's writing dystopian sci-fi, which was a table that we had going on. It was great because we could pull in a variety of readers. If they're walking by, say, "Hey, do you like to read?" And they're like, "Sure." It's like, "Well, what do you like to read?" And if they say sci-fi, we're like, "Oh, cool. Go talk to J.M. Tompkins. She's got just what you need." But what always happens is you you lure them to the table with that, but they always ask what everyone else writes. And a lot of times they will be like, came over for sci-fi, but they buy a Meth Wizard book or they buy a high fantasy book. So I'm trying to get myself to where I can be all that at a table. So like I said, I'm working on a horror novel right now. The book that I have that's coming out next month is Southern Gothic, kind of like Southern Gothic meets depressing romance.
Interesting.
Blended together with the supernatural. It's impossible to market, so I don't have high hopes for it. But it's one of those deals where I also have, I have my steampunk stuff. I have fantasy stuff. I have some military fantasy that I've written, and eventually I will get all these things out. So when someone comes to my table, it's like, oh, if you like horror, I have this.
Right.
If you like urban fantasy, I have this. If you like fantasy, I have this, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So that's what I'm working towards.
You're gonna be a one-man shop. Pretty cool.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Do you find that it's difficult to write in some of the, I mean, I guess it sounds like you are picking genres that you feel comfortable in and you have a story to write there, but do you find it's difficult to write in any of those other genres?
It used to. The reason I did it initially is because I had what I called writing ADD. If I would spend too much time writing in one genre, I'd get bored with it.
Right.
And I would have to shift genres into something else to keep the interest going. I've now gotten to a point where I've trained my brain enough. Humans, we're easily trainable. So I've trained my brain to the point now where I can keep writing. I've been writing primarily, urban fantasy for the past 3 years and have not gotten bored with it. I'm just taking a pause to get some of this other stuff out. But then I'm hoping no later than summer of next year, I will have seriously started on the next Jubal County book.
Can I ask about any particular tools that you use for writing or software, anything that you would recommend writers?
I just use Google Drive because I have really looked at Scrivener. I'm on the cusp of buying Scrivener, but that's not from a writing perspective. That's from a publishing perspective. I know people who use Scrivener and it does really good for doing like ebook. Here's a if you buy any of my ebooks, you will not find a hyperlinked index at the front. My understanding is it's very easy to whip up an ebook or a nice PDF that you can upload to Amazon using Scrivener. So from a publishing aspect, that's very appealing to me because my current publishing method is format it in Word, upload it, preview it, find a mistake, fix it, upload it, rinse, repeat 30 times.
Right.
And it's miserable. But I like Google Drive because it's something that I can on the fly on my phone. Android-based phone. I have Google Drive on my front page there. So if I get an idea on the fly, I can add a few lines, or just wherever I'm at, I can access my work. So that for me, I worked at a job at a warehouse, like night shift, that they didn't care what I did as long as my work was done. And it's real annoying to write a story and then have to email it to yourself to carry on the next part. So Google Drive was great for me.
Yeah.
I will say I do the technology I do use a lot is I violently hate software subscription. I will crawl into the road in front of an 18-wheeler before Adobe gets a penny of my money. But there's a suite of programs, Affinity. That is what I use. They basically have a Photoshop competitor, a book layout competitor, and a graphic design competitor. That's their direct competition to Amazon, but you just buy it once. It's very comparable. It does not have every little bell and whistle that Adobe has, but it has far more than you will probably ever be able to figure out how to use.
Yeah.
I know from experience. And so I design all my book covers in there. I do all my promo work in there because that's something that's always a struggle. Like you can only post so many pictures of your word count on Instagram before people get bored with it.
Right.
And writing. And that's another great thing about conventions. Going to conventions gives you a lot of content, visual content to put on your Instagrams to catch people's eyes.
Yeah.
And so, but making my own little promo images, or making, like, I just made a bingo card that I'm going to, at my next con, there's going to be a bingo card that if you if you get bingo on it, and you can prove to me that you got bingo, which is basically, to do that, you just take a picture with someone that's wearing one of the cosplays, you get a free prize from my booth.
That's
they'll get like some
cool.
stickers and postcards and stuff like that. But it's something that like I just whipped up in Affinity real quick because I thought, oh, this could be fun, and it could get people to come back to my booth.
Right.
And the more times, what is it like? If someone sees you 7 times, that's what you're trying to do. You want people. Kickstarter has figured me out. They send me the same ad 7 times, and invariably I race over to Kickstarter and back whatever they're trying to sell me.
I think
so
you've got something there though,
that.
because ever since I had you in my email and started checking you out for the interview, I see you a lot in my feeds now, and so I feel like I know you. Like I see your face every day. I think it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea being, it's like they stop by, it's like, oh, that looks like that would be fun. And if they have a positive memory from it and they come back to my booth to get some free stuff, who knows? Maybe they buy something. Maybe they don't, but maybe they remember me fondly.
Right.
And then they see me at the next con. And that's something that I'm really working to expand my footprint, as it were. Like most of the cons I've done have been Alabama and Atlanta. But I did my first con in Charlotte, North Carolina this year. And so I did not sell super well at that event. But part of that is because I'm unknown up there.
Yeah.
Like at Atlanta, there's a somewhat reasonable chance that you may have seen me at a con. You may have seen me on a panel somewhere. But North Carolina, I'm totally unknown. So, but the idea is the more you do it, the more people see you, the more... And like, let's be real. I'm still in my work clothes, but I'm 6'1", over 300 pounds. I'm a big, burly, biker-looking dude. When I'm at conventions, I wear a big vest. It's behind me here with all my nerdy. It's it's got all my patches and pins. It's got
that's
my
right.
logo
I saw
on
a
the
picture
back.
of it. Yes.
Yeah. So I cut a somewhat intimidating figure, but I'm super friendly. I'm just a big teddy bear. But do that enough times and people notice, and then they become more comfortable with seeing you, and they're more likely to stop by. They're more likely to check you out.
Right.
And so the more points of contact I can build with someone, the more likely they are to buy something. And if they buy one thing, it makes it that much more likely that they'll buy 2 things.
Yeah.
So, and then on and on. So.
Folks, I usually kind of like point every little, that's a good tip. That's a good tip. There's been so many here, and I didn't want to interrupt him, but I think honestly, you have tips. All networking is key, is what it sounds like. And you have figured this out, and you're still coming up with ideas. And it's so good, folks. Listen and analyze every little bit. Go back and listen to all this, and you will pick out, if I didn't point it out, you will pick out all the little bits of advice that he has dropped. Because usually I like to end with, what's your advice? And I'm going to ask you anyway. I don't know if you have any other advice outside of what you've already given, but there's a bunch there, and I think it all ties to networking. So that's what your takeaway
really
is,
does.
folks.
And I am actually working. Early on in my career, I released a little self-help book, an ebook called Create Your Way to Freedom. And I didn't know much then, and like everything I'm saying, like I get this. I've had this conversation with people before, like, how do you do so much? Like you do all these things. I did not start doing all these things last month. Like I've literally been building this over a decade. Like all these one-sheet games I designed most of those 2+ years ago. I'm not actively designing games right now while trying to publish, while trying to do podcasting. Like it's stuff that is built over a career. And that's the thing. Like, don't look at someone like me and be like, oh, I could never do all that. Well, I couldn't do all this if I was starting from scratch last month. I would lose my flipping mind. There's no way.
Yeah.
But like, you just build on things. And like, look, for everything you see that I do that it's like, oh, that looks like it's going well. There are a lot of things that have been deleted from the memory of history. Because they went really, really poorly. Yeah. Trust me, I know a good bit now, but it has been hard-earned knowledge from a ongoing series of really bad mistakes.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, and maybe we'll have to do like a episode 2, and we'll talk. Well, it's up to you if you want to talk about mistakes.
Yeah,
but
I'm very open to talking about mistakes. I've made a lot. So.
Right, because that's the thing. I mean, that's what I want people to take away is I want them to get advice from people who have been in the trenches, not just pie in the sky YouTube interviews with very, very famous authors. You know, like it needs to be, this is what it's really like, folks. And that's what I want people to get to take away from this. So I love this.
Yeah, and the thing is that you're in the ground floor. And so, 10 years from now, when, Journey, Penelope, and me are super famous authors, you'd be like, I
had
got
them
them
on my
early.
show.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Oh, me and Bob go way back.
Right?
So,
Yeah. I remember seeing him at the convention scene. Like all you folks who've seen him in conventions, you can say it too. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shoot. I hate to end it. This is a little bit of a longer episode, but Bob,
No
it
worries.
was so nice having you on and finally getting to chat after this kind of buildup of like, who's Bob? Everybody's telling me about Bob. Bob's great. Bob is fantastic. Honestly, you are fantastic. So Tales by Bob, folks.
Thank you.
You need to check out his website. Like I said, he's got his fingers in everything. It's definitely got a tie with your networking that you do. You just have everything around you, like everything you love is pulled around you in a little circle. And so folks, go check out his site, go check out his books. I am very interested in this meth wizard, so I can't wait to learn more about that.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to end on? Any kind of like final message? Anything like?
I will end with my single best tip that I can give people is if you seriously want to make any sort of career at this, you've got to treat it like a job. At a minimum, treat it like a part-time job. It's that level of dedication is what it's going to take. And if you don't take it seriously, and you're going to have to make some boundaries, and some of those boundaries won't always be happy boundaries. I've really enjoyed this. I love doing all these things, but I know my wife would rather that I was in there watching, the next episode of Great British Bake Show with her.
Yeah.
And that would be great. But she's understanding. She knows that these are the kind of things that are going to help my career and help, one day I can buy her that castle in Ireland.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So, but if that's whatever success looks like for you, you're probably really going to have to treat this like a job to some degree at a minimum. And the sooner you start doing that, the sooner it'll start paying off for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like fake it till you make it, or dress for the job you want. It's kind of like that, right? Like you got to treat it like a job if you want it to be a career, I would think.
Yeah. I dress like a hobo all the time because my dream is to not have to have a job. That's my dream.
I love it.
So I would still be writing, but there'd be a lot less pressure. So.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. All right, folks. Well, that's Bob for you. I hope you go check out all his things. I had such a good time on this interview. I appreciate you taking the time out. And I really hope I bump into you at a con sometime. Like I'm in California, so hopefully you spread wide enough that somewhere we'll meet in the middle, and I will see you at a con.
Yeah, I'm applying for a grant. That if I get this grant, it's going to be used for travel to cons. So I've got a con in Salt Lake I'm looking at. So I'll look at one in California too.
I have family in Salt Lake. Okay.
There we go.
It's happening. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please check out Bob, please. And like all his things, if you read his blog, which I think you will find very resourceful, make sure you like that too. All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
All
thank you. This is awesome.
You can find Bob McGough, information on his latest projects, and event dates on his website at talesbybob.com. There's currently 6 books available in the Jubal County Saga. It's quoted as somewhere between Jim Butcher and Bill Faulkner. Follow the tales of Howard Marsh, degenerate backwards wizard, as he goes about trying to solve the occult mysteries of the county he calls home. And newly released, a collection of Southern Gothic supernatural tales set within the world of Jubal County. See what others are saying about Southern Suadade. Make sure you like and subscribe for more interviews like this, and thanks for getting Purdy Nerdy with us.